We're gonna take these hood springs off so that we can do that. And I don't know if you know how to take the hood springs off. I don't know if I know how to take the hood springs off. But I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna take the hood springs off. Basically, it's like a trampoline spring. If the hood is closed, it's stretched, and if the hood is open, then it's got lace tension on it. You got to pull the spring down. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a rope, and we've tied a circle in a rope. Okay, we're gonna loop it through this backside. Grab the camera, I'll show you. Bring you in. All right, front side, the hook is on the inside. So we're literally gonna take it through this side, loop it back through to itself. And I'm having struggling holding the camera in, doing it. All right, so we got it like that on the outside with the J-hook part on the inside. Put gloves on always when you're messing with something like this. Make sure you have a hood prop or a buddy holding the hood up. Put our foot in the spring. I'm gonna step down on the rope. We're gonna go up to the front notch that relieves a little pressure off. And there we go. You definitely gotta fight with it a little. Make sure we wear gloves because like that pinched my glove. But now our hood springs don't have no tensions on them. Now we should be able to close the hood, hopefully loosen the bolts, and make the needed adjustments. All right, so we're gonna tighten the back bolts on the hinges. We can't really get to the front bolts, but now that our back ones are tight and we have no spring pressure on it, when the hood opens up, it shouldn't move the front bolt, and then we can kind of lock the bolt down, and then we can take, make some sticks out, close it back, and see what we got. I also, before I took this front end off of this car, I laid this level on my fenders, and that showed me that my fenders are actually level. The top of the fender that the hood sits on is level. So the bottom of the hood should pretty much be level, and that's the reason why I have a jack underneath the front over here to lift this up until this is pretty much level. Like I said, we're not looking for perfection right now, we're just looking for really close. All right, so we have maxed out our hinges. We put the springs back on. We did double check that the hinges are all the way up. So the back of these hinges, they move up and down like this, and then the front moves forward and backwards. It's real wonky. But we didn't gain anything. So we're right back in the same place that we were, meaning that basically the hinges is not what stops the hood from coming down. It's a terrible design, but I realize now that we would have to go way up with the hinge to get it to collapse on itself, since it's like a scissor mechanism on those kind of cars. So I have been working on these hinges for every bit of 3 hours now, literally, okay? And I want to kind of show you where I'm at and explain a couple things. There's no way I could have filmed for 3 hours stumbling through this, trying to figure out what will work, because I'm absolutely not having it with that fitment. So first I started with making a simple template of the actual hinge that bolts to the body. Now, originally your hole was only to about right here where the fingernail is at, so I extended the hole way down here to get more alignment. Now this hole ran forward and backwards like this, so it basically looked like that. I extended that down there to get a lot of play, okay? And this one looked about like that, and I extended all that down. That way, I would be able to lift the hood up where I could get the fitment that I want. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind is when you put the springs on, the springs literally take the hinges and pull the piss out of them down, like very hard. And so that is what really you struggle with, is getting, if you get it right in its relaxed state, then as soon as you pull the hinge down, then it's going to tighten up. So we're a little high right now because we don't have the springs on here to pull this down. I'm not too worried about being high necessarily, because I can adjust that out. I want to be able to get this thing up enough so I know that I can just come back down. Once I get it up to where it needs to be, then I can connect the dots to the old bolt hole, and then we can move up and down if we need to be. Another thing that you're going to realize really fast is that we're hitting in the center, all right? So this radius actually does not match the car at all. It's really close, but it does not match the car at all. So this is just metal up here. There's no support. So more than likely, we're going to just focus on from about here to here on getting this curve to match, all right, and getting this gap decent, and then, or even right here, and then we can reshape this whole gap with the grinder. We can open that gap up. That's no issue at all, that gap up there. But we got to at least have this right here. This side wants to stay up higher, but again, no pressure on it. So as soon as you put pressure on it, it goes back where it kind of needs to be. Now you can also slide the hood forward and backwards a little bit, and I can modify that where I can make it so that we can 100% slide this hood forward and backwards. And that's probably what I'll end up doing. So here's where we cut our hinge, and you can go ahead and see them. You can see how bad we're off. All right, it's just ridiculous. Okay, so the factory bolt hole is here, and the factory bolt hole, this one, you can see is about right here. All right. As you can see, this is where it was slotted up here. So it could go forward and backwards this little bit on this side, and then it was about right here. You can see where my cut stops. Okay, so about right there. That's where it's at. So one of these washers was all the way up there. That's how bad this thing is off. It is absolutely ridiculous how much I had to move this hinge up to get this thing to not be just killing this paint. And if you notice, I mean, over the years, dude, look, it has straight up squished. These are actually tacks, so these are not like the Fox body Mustangs and stuff, the trim pieces. These are actually screw-in tacks. They twist in, they have little screw stuff, but it has absolutely just squished these things in there because the hinges were so freaking low that it was just pulling the whole hood down and just putting pressure on the body. Like the sheet metal of the hood was just, you know, pressed onto the body when this thing come down. And that's the reason why it has literally just squished all of these pins. These pins shouldn't be squished at all. And they're not squished that bad in the center because, again, look at the center of the hood. Look at that, okay? There's no support, so it couldn't bite as hard on the pins. But out here, where these springs were pulling these hinges down, it just absolutely pushed these things all the way down into the body. Unfreaking real. I'm going to have to now figure out what approach I'm going to take to this. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to tighten up all these rivets. Now, some people press them, and I don't know. I've seen another guy that welded them. Actually, you weld one side, you press them together with a clamp and weld one side up, and that makes it really freaking tight. So as you can see, we have just a lot of play in this thing. If we throw this thing in the vise, I don't know if you can even see it down here without the table moving. You see that up there? I'm trying to hold the bottom. There's just, I mean, this whole piece just has a lot of play. Everything. See all that moving down there? It's just a lot of freaking play. And when that's under the hood, it's hard to align something that has that much play. So I'm gonna try to clean these joints up real fast in here. And then we're gonna weld on the side that's not the pancake. So that's the pancake side. We'll weld on the other side. And that's the pancake side, the nice pretty head. So we'll weld on the back side. So we'll weld on the back side of all of them, basically. Tighten them up with a clamp and hit a little weld on them and tighten them up. All right, so now we're just working some PB Blaster in there. And look at that, everything just moves. And we don't have really the play no more. I mean, you have the play that you would naturally have in the joint, but it was really floppy before. I probably didn't do the best job at showing it. When I got it in the vise, you really seen it. That's what I should have did to show y'all, but we're solid. Some of my welds don't look the best because, of course, that one looks a lot better. Of course, there's literally grease, and we put PB Blaster in there earlier, so I can clean the outside of it, but that's about all I can do. So it's popping and kicking and spitting whenever you weld it. There's the back sides of them, but now we have a tight hinge, and so that eliminates, the possibility of any of our problems being from the hinge flex. And it's just a good idea to go ahead and do this. I mean, this tightens it up, and this is really a permanent fix, in my opinion. Like, this thing should last another 75 years. This is what I mean on this hinge. So remember back here how we're sticking out, the hood sticking out, we need it to go in. Even though we just tightened that up, we still just have a little bit of play in there. If we notice right here, see how that has play, all right? It's actually down in here. It's actually on that hinge right down there. Let's see if I can make the camera stop moving. Okay, so that one still has a little bit of play in it, but that affects how this backside goes in and out. So we're going to fit the hood back up, but what we might end up having to do is put this thing in the vise and literally try to bend this thing in so that it keeps that hood, lined up down the side. Let me show you the other side. It's untouched. See that? Okay. That's what I'm talking about. That is, I mean, it's very hard to get something aligned when something has this much play in it. Let's take this one off, tighten this one up. All right, so now on this hinge, we still have some play, but nothing like what we did have. I feel like and there's like no play whenever it's up. That's just the flex in the bracket, no play. When it's down, we still have that much. And I feel like that's just what you're gonna kind of get. I mean, I got it, pressed up as tight as I could. I feel like that's just maybe the holes kind of wallered out in this actual piece right here. And I know that you can drill them and probably put a bushing in them and all this crazy stuff. But I'm not looking really to do that. So that's a whole lot better than what we just had. So one more thing that I have found, which is going to be a lot of our problem, is if we come down the edge of this, because remember this bolts to the edge of the hood, and that's where the hood goes. That is perfect. Like, by the time you add the thickness of the metal and move it out this way, then it's straight in line, all right? That literally, it doesn't stick out past the body. But over here on the side, we're having trouble with, look at that. There's our issue, another one of our issues. So we need to play with this set. I think I'm gonna put everything in a vise and squish it together like this until we can get that to bump in to the corner of that cow pedal. That's what I'm talking about. We stick that one down that side. Look at that. We're definitely in now. And that last time I got pissed off with it basically and really crunched it. So we're still good, no play, goes up and down, and it is sitting inside of the body. So let's see what difference that makes. All right, so the interesting thing is that now that we have our piece correct like that, now our height is way off. Okay, so I'm almost wondering if now we can go back to our original holes and if maybe all of our problems are fixed. Maybe it was just having to do with that being that far out on that side, because that was a lot. That now, of course, we need to push the center up. You know, now if we went down, maybe we'd be right. Maybe the whole time it was just that hinge over there blowed out. This has been an interesting journey today. So it's interesting. Back in our original holes up there, this hinge might be up just a touch because it does have where we slotted it. And we have like pretty good fitment for roughing. Okay, it's definitely not 100%, but this side now has not good fitment. So now I'm wondering, and our trim's too low. So this side needs to come up. It's too low. And if we see here, we can't pick the hood up or nothing. So now I'm wondering if we squish the hinge, if that fixes our issue, or do we slot this hinge? All right, so we're gonna take one more stab at this hood. I had one guy point out a piece that's in this box that I'm about to show you. We didn't release any videos this past week because I've been kind of honestly just disappointed in the, not the growth, because we steady grow. We don't ever go downhill. Like, we're steady growing up, but I want to let y'all know where we're possibly going. I see a lot of other channels that people are watching. It shows me in my analytics what my viewers are watching, and a lot of the other channels, their content it's garbage. The quality is not great. A lot of it's just them standing there talking, and then maybe they time-lapse themselves working, and then they're talking, time-lapse stuff working, and there's no meat and potatoes in the content. Like, you're watching them do stuff, but they're not teaching step by step and actually giving you value to your experience. But these channels are growing. These channels are 100K plus channels, and they're doing well. And so have kind of reevaluated myself over the past week. That's why there's been no film. I actually have content on my phone, but I just kind of just gave up on YouTube for a week, per se. If seems like if that's what's going to help a channel grow, then that's what we'll do. If I think maybe I'm providing too much content or too much detail, even though my passion is to help others, and maybe people just don't want to see that. So I started out doing content because I wanted to help other people be able to do the same things that I can do. If we're not getting really the views that I think we should be getting for helping other people, then maybe we don't need to focus so much on that. We'll still do some how-to videos on the paint and stuff like that, but maybe people just want to see the journey and just kind of check out what you're doing. A lot of my analytics on the age of y'all, I think it's 45 to 55. Y'all are wise, you've been around, you know what you're doing, and a lot of y'all give really good advice. So you don't need to learn anything, even though some of y'all say you do learn a couple things from the videos. With that said, I had a very wise guy, knowledgeable, I mean, not in a bad way, reach out to me and say, hey, I think your hood is missing a support. So he said on his, I think it was 76, it had this support, but it's set, or 46, it had this support, but maybe it's 48 didn't. Now this is a 48 body, titled a 49 because it was it was the end of 48, or beginning of 49. It was made with 48 leftover parts, is how it worked back then. And he was like, I had commented back on the video and I said, shoot me a link or a picture in my email. My email is always in the description below every single video. I said, shoot me what part you think that I'm missing. And I meant that in a sincere way, like help me out. And sure enough, extremely nice guy, I appreciate it. He shot me an email with some pictures and I took his advice. I often take a lot of y'all's advice unless I know we're going in a different direction. Y'all have been around this stuff more than me, and I appreciate it. So I took his advice and we paid $145 for this support. Now, I'm not sure why my car does not have this support. He said that his later year one also did not have it, but this will help keep the hood from being flimsy. Now, it's gonna have to be modified. That kind of bums me out because of the way the hood is seamed together, and I'll show you. But $145, you can fab something yourself, and that's kind of what I was gonna do. Is originally I was going to fabricate a part to make the hood supported, or you paid $145 and just keep it moving. The $145 sometimes will save you money. Yes, it's more expensive, but it should fit the hood exact. So this is the part, and it has the nice curves on the end to fit the radius of the hood. This is supposed to bolt to the hinges, which mine are not the same. He sent me pictures of his, and it bolts to the hinges. Mine, the piece is not there. So we're gonna have to do some modifying. But if we can get this in there and get this to work, then this is gonna give us the curve of the back of the hood that we need. And what I noticed on his is that this piece is split pretty much on the bolt, where the bolt goes up. So mine's missing. It basically comes straight across. It's more like square on his, and it bolts in right there on both sides, and then goes across. And then he has a center bracket that mine also does not have, to keep the center of the hood from doing this right here, to tie that in. That also keeps the hinges from spreading out, keeps your hood from flexing. It just ties everything together. So we need to make some little plates on these hinges to basically extend this hinge up, so that we'll be able to bolt this all together like it's supposed to be. And then we'll need to make some kind of bracket in the center that will keep the center sturdy, so it doesn't do that right there and flop all over the place like it does. That will also keep the hood from wiggling like this. You can see how it wiggles around really bad, so that's going to stiffen all that up. The more that I look at this, so y'all don't know yet, but we just bought a $1,200 steering rack. We've spent a lot of money. This was $145, I think, list price on eBay from Mopar Pro. They do have an eBay store. With shipping, I can't remember what it was. I'll have to put it across the bottom of the screen right here. But we're basically down at least $150 for this one piece. I think we're gonna send this thing back. The pictures that he sent me, I did not realize that it doesn't sit tight to the hood. So it only hits each hinge on each side like I just showed you, plus it hits the center brace. It doesn't actually hit the hood itself in the center. So I'm thinking now that I know we need a brace there, I'm thinking we can build a pretty nice piece out of rod, basically go to Southern Metals over here and get some rod, or even something. And I'm thinking we could just build this piece ourselves, possibly. I'm thinking that might be what we should do. But maybe we should go ahead and build it while we have this piece here to make a copy of. So I think that we hold off on this. So I've took that piece and I've marked my Sharpie line of where that factory piece would hit. That way now I know. So I know my center, and I can measure it, write the measurements down in case the Sharpie line disappears, but it shouldn't. And I think what we should do is we should build this out of a nice rod. Almost transfer, I'm seeing now in my head the spider web. So you know how we have the spider web gussets. I'm thinking we do some rod that's bent up there almost into like a spider web gusset. Big, arched, for the center of that hood. So when you open this hood, you don't have no focal point back here. Like, this thing is boring, okay? We're gonna slick the bottom of this thing out where it's like beautiful paint. There's beautiful paint on the bottom, it's top, it's a show car. And we could take them little rods and we could airbrush all of them little rods some kind of wicked color, whether it's like a color change in pearl, so it's almost got that titanium look, because we're going to have the exhaust. I think we're going to have a titanium hood exit. And then we could just do like really beautiful rod work under there. There's been a lot going on that y'all don't know about. So Brandon, his YouTube channel is, I think it's Today in the Shop. I plugged it a couple videos back. He taught me how to TIG the other night. So he got me laying some TIG. Still don't know what I'm doing. But I have spent a decent amount of money on new welding hoods, some larger cups for TIG, everything. We're ready to TIG. I'm ready to pull it out right now, and I can throw down on a little bit. So we've done that. We've submitted the tax exempt form to Eastwood for a CNC plasma table. I've been researching like crazy. There's L word plasma tables. I can't remember what the L word is or how you pronounce it. It's lag something. But after in-depth research, it seems like the Eastwood plasma table is just pull the trigger, about $3,000. I think it's like 2 foot by 2 foot. And we're ready to go right out the box. We don't have to add nothing on. It comes with everything. It's pretty nice unit from what I've seen. We don't need much bigger than 2 foot by 2 foot because we need to plasma cut a bunch of brackets and gussets. That's what we need. So we'll be able to even possibly do half gussets in here made out of spider web, once we could get everything laid out. I'm not 100% sure, but I think what we should do is pause on this hood. I think I should throw the springs back on this thing and just pause on the hood. I'm kind of stumbling around right now. The steering rack left me stumbling, but we ordered, we got on the way what we think will work for that. The bags I stumbled through last weekend, but half is done. We're about to duplicate the other side for y'all. I think that's where we're at. I think that's what we need to do. Sending that back, put $150 back into the build, get a better result. Moving on to our airbag setup, we have one side completely done, and again I stumbled through this, and so I kind of stopped filming, but I'm going to take you through the other side and show you how I do it. One confusion that we had in the comment section was the bolts. So I kind of misspoke. Whenever we originally went and bought these bolts from the hardware store that are down here, we bought the cheapest ones possible just for mock-up. I was not about to buy the grade 8 bolts at the local hardware store or anywhere in Wilmington, North Carolina, because it's too expensive. You can order these bolts and hardware off the internet and get them a lot cheaper, and sadly or frankly or honestly, however you want to call it, I prefer to order my stuff from China. It's just what I do. I like cheap. I understand that the quality can be off and the quality cannot be there, so you do that at your own risk. But me, I am not going to sit here and pay all that money for hardware store bolts local that are probably from China anyway. So we have 12.9, and like I said, this is straight from China, grade bolts. Now, a 12.9 is higher than a grade 8 bolt. It's higher than a 10.9, I think, or 10.8, whatever it is. I think it's 10.9. And we have 12.9, the nuts to go with it. If the quality is off on the 12.9 and it has to come down some, then I'm going to guess it closer to a grade 8. Maybe it's off and it's all the way down to a 10-something. Whatever it is, this thick of a bolt right here, I'm not worried about shearing it at all on a front suspension. The factory doesn't even use 12.9 bolts, so I'm going to roll with it, and I've been doing this for years, ordering stuff off of eBay from China, and never had an issue so far. So I'm going to keep on doing what I do, but you do what you feel comfortable with doing. The other problem with local bolts, this needed to be metric, is they didn't even have ones long enough for what I need. So I'd had to go into Wilmington to a specialty store and get bolts that way. Now on these bag mounts, I learned a lot. First off, let's throw a little bit of air in this. Now this is all just tacked into place, but let's just put a little bit of air back in this. The compressor's gonna cut on. Little compressor doesn't do much at all over there, but we had a lot of work to do with our clearances. So we needed our bags kind of split in the center of the mounting points. All right, when you're at ride height, from everything that I found out, you kind of want both mounting surfaces, the top and the bottom, to be parallel. Obviously, when you're at full extension or full laid frame, they're going to go catawampus. One's going to be off from the other. So this is going to be a fixed bag mount, which is 90 degrees off the frame. That mount down there is going to move with the control arm. So as the control arm comes up, the angle is going to get worse, and it's going to end up basically like this up against that. But when you start blowing the pressure into it, which is when it matters the most, is when it's under load and under pressure and stressed, okay, it's going to go back to perfectly straight. So this is how we have them basically mounted. Is I have this style mount on the bottom of the control arm, and then the top piece put between there, and we're about to duplicate it on this side. But what I realized was at ride height, which is right here where we're at, this lower control arm is 12 degrees. It's 12 degrees like this. So in order to make this lower bag mount down there, in order to not make this sit at 12 degrees like this, we needed to straighten it up, meaning we needed to cut 12 degrees out of it at an angle across here. So that is what we did, and if you can see in there, it's just tacked in. So we can't lift the car right now under its own bags because everything's just tacked. So we just have a couple tacks in here holding it in. And I don't honestly think this compressor will do it. These bags are rated up to 250 PSI. And I think the compressor is struggling at like 100, 120 PSI. It's basically a trim gun compressor. But it's enough to show us what the bag does. Now we had a lot of fighting with clearance issues. Whenever this thing is fully laid out, it wants to get into this control arm. So if we go ahead, since I can't do this two-handed, and we let our air out of our bag, which I'm just using that mostly, and we jack this up so that we can get this thing at bagged height. And I'll show y'all, as long as we hopefully don't pop the brackets off. Let's make sure that we get all the air. There goes my wheel. We're now at bagged height, all right? So that is basically, if we look down the tire and the rocker, that is where we lay frame, all right? That's gonna be the 4x4 and 2x4 on top of that. So this is what it looks like when it is completely laid out. We now have the clearance of our bag in here. It's not touching this plate, it's only touching the edge of the tube. And there's no air in this bag because it's completely laid frame. If you were to look underneath it or feel underneath it, you would feel that it is 100% clear of this plate because we cleared it. You can tell how bad of an angle the bag is now at, but without cutting the plate, it would have been at this angle versus now it is, instead of like this, it's a little bit more like this. So it's not as stressed out as if you just mounted it straight to the bottom control arm. But as you start applying air to it, or as the suspension drops, let's jack this up a little bit and get our blocks out from underneath here. Okay. It really doesn't matter if the wheel's turned or not, but as we start dropping, okay, right there, we actually go up. Let me go up to where the bag, you see we're clear. So if we go up to the bag starts to come in contact right about there, which is still relatively far off of the block. It's actually thickness of a 4x4, which I think is 3.5, 3.75. Okay, so the only time that the bag is touching is when we are in this last 1.5 inches of laying frame. That's the only time the bag actually touches anything. Now, rule of thumb is your bag's not supposed to touch anything, but we are just touching it against a smooth bar that is going to be painted, and it's not going to have any air. So as soon as this thing comes up 1.5 inches, then it's gonna completely clear the tube. Now when it's laid frame, it is also touching inside here. I can't really get a shot on it, but it is touching in our frame rail. I thought about going in there, we can kind of see it right here. I thought about going in there and notching the frame rail out, but then we lose support of the frame rail. As soon as you start throwing air to this thing, and this thing comes back up to ride height though, as you can see, we are not touching the frame rail in there at all. We're not touching a control arm. We're not touching the control arm on the back side. All right, so we're completely clear whenever this thing is got air in it, and the suspension will be doing the up and down movements. 2 inches of bump up, we're clear. 2 inches of bump down, we're clear. So all of the movement while you're riding this thing and it has air pressure in it, is not going to be rubbing anything at all. It will only touch whenever it is completely laid frame. Now, I racked my brain all weekend, last weekend, trying to figure this out. I did multiple setups, multiple tack welds in there, multiple different designs, multiple mounting points, everything to get it where it had the max clearance of anything when it's touching. Also, to get it where the bags under load, under stress, were pretty much parallel with each other on the mounting surfaces. This is how it ended up being. Originally, I had it so that the top of the plate here, all right, this airbag plate right here was flush with this frame rail. So they were all flush, but that made your top mount too low, okay? That, when the bag was squished, it made it too tight together. So instead of having a bag that's squished this tight, which the minimum clearance on this bag I think is 2.75 inches, the max is 12 inches of separation, is how the max spread of the bag. Instead of having it cramped all up by moving that upper mount down, I moved the upper mount up so that whenever it's completely laid frame, it has a little bit more spacing between the two plates. That way it's easier to come up and the bag is not so stressed out at the completely pancaked and squashed, awkward angles, just bad all around. My first idea on this was simply to take this and mount it like that. And that's what we did. It looked good. It was flush with the top. All right, but it just, like I said, didn't work out. So then I wanted to bring it up some, but all I could bring it up was that, because at that point, we're now hitting on our control arms right there. That's as high as it'll go, because then it hits your control arm pieces right there. All right, so we needed it more up like this, a lot higher, like you can see on that side. That's way up. That's pretty much in line with the bolts. So what I did was I took this plate and we cut it right here on each of these bends, because I don't have a bender, the heavy duty here to straighten this back out or rebend it. And that allowed me to hammer the piss out of this thing with the relieve cuts to bend these tabs back in like I needed them. And then we'll come back later and we'll weld these all up. Now this worked out perfect because we can get in here and weld this, but we're actually going to be able to weld down this. We'll be able to close this gap up through here, and we'll be able to weld this mount completely to this mount right here. When you come underneath here, we'll be able to weld back through our cut, which is right here, and we'll be able to weld right here, which attaches this plate to this plate. So it is really gonna freaking rock solid tie this bag mount into the frame section. The same along the back. We won't be able to fill in that gap, but we'll be able to come back here inside there, and we will be able to weld our top plate right, or our mount right here for a control arm, to our bag plate. So overall, it's going to give us a great, strong mounting point in the end. All right, so we have clearance the lower control arm. I pulled my bag off of the other side because I don't have enough air fittings here at the moment to make this work. So I've got this temporary one rigged up on this line, and that's what I've been using. And I just realized I got to actually go cut that bracket like we did on the other side. Let me show you what we did. Basically, to get this thing to go on there, it won't fit. So you have to cut one of these little pieces. Let's see. But to do that, we need to figure out which way the bag needs to be shifted. Let's see here. Not really a lot of movement on the top. And your mount's not perfectly centered on the bottom, the ones that I'm using. They're universal bag mount. The good news is that with us buying a plasma table now, we're purchasing the plasma table, moving forward, man, my neighbors are being very loud. Moving forward, we would be able to cut our own plates like this, the bag plates and stuff, and we won't have to order universal stuff. So let's see here. All right, a little Saturday morning action. Waking up, getting started. Still got the slippers on. Stuff don't get serious until we slip tennis shoes on. Once we slip tennis shoes on, you know things are about to get serious. But this is where we left off yesterday. Working on mocking this up. I actually had to pause and move this a little. So I think I moved this about 1/8 of an inch, the mount. Very important that your upper mount obviously exactly where it goes, because we're about to line this bottom of this bag up. This bag's going to come straight down when we put air in it, and that's going to be where we mount the lower. So if we didn't stop, go back, cut the welds, we found the center. So this center line wasn't on screen a minute ago. We found center here, which is what we originally did with that side. But then this side, I said screw it, and I would just eyeball it. And then I ended up really close to this bolt. Now I'm still extremely close to this bolt over here. The threads, I think you could fit your driver's license through there, but that's it. So there's like no room. So we probably need to come in here and possibly cut this back. I'm hoping that we can put in an order for a CNC table this week. And if we do, I'd like to cut this piece back some and put a flat plate on here, like at an angle like this, and put some script or design or something in it on both sides. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Pretty excited if we can get a CNC table, but it's definitely going to be a learning curve on how to design stuff. So the bottom, we need to go cut that piece. We didn't cut that piece yesterday. Oh, because we got to figure out, that's why I stopped. I stopped because that wasn't centered. So we got to figure out what side we need to cut on this. I was trying to remember why I stopped. I was like, hold on a second. Why did we not do that? All right, now we can put the airbag down just a little. So I just set this up, slip my blower in here. But I do think I'm gonna go ahead and order the lines, because I can go ahead and tie these front bags together like under the engine so that we can still feed it like this. That way they both work. We do this, all this is gonna do is just, yeah, right there, just extends our bag down a little. It slowly leaks off through here. But this gives us an idea of exactly where our mount needs to be, basically which side we need to cut out. So what we need to do is cut this little section out right here, because a bolt literally needs to pretty much go right through there. A bolt will catch the end of this, and then right there, and then that's going to offset it. There's not enough spread on those brackets for it, but they work fine. They're close enough. bag number 2. Well, we don't want to rip the mount off, so it's just got a tack on it. If I keep going like that, it's gonna rip the mount off too much more, but you get the idea. That's that. This side completely collapsed is better than the other side. We're still completely collapsed. We still touch on the frame in there. There's no air in it. All the air is let out. The bag is just sitting there. We're completely clear of the plate beautifully, and again, we're just touching the tube. So I think that will be fine in my opinion. I understand that you technically don't want the bag touching anything at all. I'm gonna see this bag as a wear item. I think these 2 fronts were like $230. So if you had to spend $230 every 5 years or so, then 2 years, that's not a big deal to me. I mean, there's not much else you can do besides redesign the control arms where the tubes come straight out. And maybe if this poses an issue at a later date, then maybe that's something we can look into at that time. But these bags are super thick, and I really don't think that them touching the A-arm at bagged height with no air in them at all, I don't think it's going to be an issue.